Jason Kamissa thought that. He took it onto a go-kart course. The go-kart course guy is like, there's no chance you can handle this truck on this course. He started doing it. He destroyed an actual go-kart taking every corner. And he's like, the learning curve was like instant. He's like, I thought it would take long to feel this difference. So those are two things, the 40 volt and the steer-by-wire are two things that the car industry has been talking about for decades. Cybertruck did it. This car, if it was just the shape that it came out in, would have been mind-blowing. But they actually, as a vehicle, because they constructed it from first principles and the beginning, they are another 10 years ahead of the car industry. It's insane. It's actually insane.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Trung and Bilal here. Unfortunately, Jack is not able to make it at the moment. He said he'll try his best to jump in if he can, but let's assume he might not be able to make it today. Trung, what's going on, mate? Big week. Lots going on.
Shout out to our boy, Michael Brandt, who's been on the Creator Lab podcast.
There we go. Yeah, my boy. I met him in person too. Yeah.
Oh, you met Mike? I know he listens to this pod, but
yeah, he's a big NI listener.
He was on LinkedIn posting about his morning routine. It included these ketone IQs. I'm like, bro, that looks sick.
You gotta send it through.
He's like, I got you, brother. So
there we go.
I know there's been running jokes about the energy levels of Trung's energy levels. I have a feeling they're gonna be through the roof because I've been hitting this. So Michael, if you're listening, these have been good, man. They actually
I was legit gonna send him a text sharing a screenshot of my friend saying this.
Hit these?
No. Remember, one of my friends had said after that one episode you were on fire. I think a couple of weeks ago about the workout.
Oh yeah.
And we were none of this is sponsored, obviously. But I was going to text and be like, look, man, there's an opportunity here for a sponsorship. So, Michael, I'm going to send him a text after this.
I got to say, though, here's the thing. I'm not speaking to this particular product, but I've done ketones in the past.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll tell you what I do like about this. Previous ketone products have given me the craziest runs in my life.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic.
Like, this actually hasn't been hitting like the runs that hard.
That's good to know. Yeah, it tastes much better than the original version was really bad. I mean, not just theirs in general, and they've done a good job of making it palatable.
Yeah, because I used to do you do the bulletproof coffee stuff? That was the first time I ever did keto.
Yeah. In the keto days, yeah.
Bro, you
get that
would
butter
hit
going.
the John
for
like 2 minutes after you finish that thing. So I gotta say,
were you putting MCT oil in it, or what were you doing?
Yeah, I don't know whatever bulletproof coffee was doing.
Yeah, because they put ghee, I think, and MCT oil or something like that. But basically, this it's real quick.
Not sponsored.
Yeah, not sponsored. But this is basically the pure version. So it's like MCTs. I think it's medium chain triglyceride. I can't even say that word. Medium chain triglycerides. I think they're the things that. This basically is the pure version. That stuff will kind of convert into this, from my understanding. But I could be completely wrong. Not medical, not coffee advice here. So
Michael will know. He's the CEO. He knows more. So
he's a smart guy. Yeah, he knows his
correct us.
Yeah, and I'll say, if you want to know, me and Michael had a good hour chat on Creator Lab. He explains the whole science behind it, why people use it. The interesting thing is, I think like a lot of endurance athletes use it. So that's
energy,
anyway,
right? It's energy.
It's energy, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about what we're chatting about today. Cybertruck going down. Obviously, I mean, this stuff looks insane. So I want to get your take on that. Elon versus the media. He's been popping off. This
has been going. It's so funny that you said that because it's been like nonstop for like 2 years.
Oh yeah, insane.
It obviously went nuts. Rafa will probably have to cut it in, like when he told Andrew Ross Sorkin that people don't want to advertise on X can go.
Oh my God, yeah.
Apology tour, if you will. This had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself.
But
go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel. Don't advertise.
But yeah, and then we've got to pay homage to our boy Charlie Munger, R.I.P. The Thread Boy's favorite, but obviously for a reason, because he's a legend.
Truly a legend.
Yeah. I think he died 99 years old, was it?
Yep. And then
what an
because we like
life.
we like to segue into topical topics, Henry Kissinger, controversial U.S. statesman, died the day after Charlie Munger.
Here we
Did
go.
not get as much love on the timeline. I can tell you that right now.
Definitely not.
And we will discuss the two sides of Kissinger. So I'll tell you just briefly. I text my dad right away. He's like, yo, did you hear about Henry Kissinger? Because my dad's got strong feelings. So we'll relay those feelings.
Vietnamese fan, senior.
Yeah, so we'll get
right.
into
We'll cover that. But yeah, so before we do that, before we talk about Cybertruck, because it is really impressive what it looks like, I just want to ask you, because obviously a lot of people following the show are following the Bitcoin price heavy. They're following the ETH price heavy. Have you been getting those dormant group chats starting to come alive? Because I got a message literally just 20 minutes before this, and it was one that's been quiet for 2 years. And it was like, are we going to do a dinner soon? What's been happening here? And I'm like, oh man, this is so funny. This is like, you got to add that into the graph, you know, like when you're trying to see where things are going, you start seeing things heat up. And are you feeling that yet? Where are you at on the cycle?
Well, I got to tell you, the most group chat, I love. So for listeners, Bilal was teeing that up before this call, and I laughed so hard because I knew exactly what he was saying, and it's hysterical. Like these dormant group chats where everybody's poor for the last 2 years because their bags are all crypto. They don't want to tell, they're just depressed, and then everything's pumping again. As Jack was joking last week, Big Larry thinks of bags. What's going on here? Not investment advice.
I saw that. Did you see the clip that Rafa pulled? He put on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and the comments, people will be like commenting already on that stuff because they know that there's something there, man. So, but not investment advice. Yo, but the other thing I was going to say, Saylor is up heavy, 1.7 billion.
Up. Yeah. Well, dude, he's been saying, what's his holding period? Forever. You're talking about Charlie Munger. You talking about Charlie Mungerisms?
Oh my God.
What has Saylor been saying? My holding period is forever.
I love that comparison because obviously Charlie Munger is not a fan. Yeah, he's not a fan of crypto or Bitcoin. But you know, you can use the tactics of the old in the new economy too. So I think that, you know, you can't think of two very different people than Saylor and Charlie Munger, but maybe they're the same in a way. So
the Charlie Munger so they re-released Poor Charlie's Almanac, which was named after Poor Benjamin's Almanac from Benjamin Franklin in the late 1700s. This is a book of wisdoms and sayings. Stripe Press released that this morning, so Tuesday morning. They released a recording that John Collison, the co-founder of Stripe, brother of Patrick Collison, they released a conversation he had with Charlie Munger before Charlie died. So this will probably be the last official podcast. Rest in peace again to Charlie Munger. But there's a long segment where, not long, 5 minutes, where John Collison's pressing Munger. Like, not really pressing, asking him about crypto. He's really? Steel manning crypto, John is. Because I believe.
Is this on the Invest Like the Best? Did they release it?
Yeah, they posted on the Invest Like the Best feed. So anyways, go listen to that. Our boy David Senra, fan of the podcast, Founders Podcast guy, he's the one, woke up this morning, sent me, he's like, dude, you got to listen to this. I've already listened 4 times. I went, bro.
4 times?
How did you already listen to this say 4 times?
Is he listening on 4x speed and he just completes it in 1x?
He just dropped a 2-hour pod that I'm going to listen to. I know,
because he had dinner with him, right? I remember listening to that.
Yeah, he had dinner a couple months ago, but this separately, he's doing it. Anyways, TLDR, to answer Bilal's original question, the only group chat that's really been blown up since crypto's been pumping again was our group chat with Jack sending the memes. So hysterical.
Yeah, that was it. Jack's been on good form there. Anyway, so just to let people know, we are going to talk about Munger. We're going to be talking about psychological tendencies. Could be a Twitter boy thread, but we're going to try to make it as not a complete thread boy thread, a verbal thread, but it's going to be good stuff.
We don't even have to do the psychological. What we should do actually is talk a bit more about his life, because people actually don't know as much about his life. That, and you can listen to all the podcasts we talked about. Anyways, and then Big Daddy Kissinger.
That's it. All right, so let's get on to Cybertruck first. So you shared an amazing video. We can share it in the show notes if we like.
Jason Camissa. Amazing.
Yeah, Jason, man, the quality on this video is insane, right? Like,
Dude.
this is next level production. But essentially, it's a review of the Cybertruck that's just been. So what's the status of this? Because I skimmed through the video because you shared it last night. I was walking in the park this morning, jumping ahead. You know how I was doing. But
So what else
tell
is
me
this?
about
It's
it.
like, if you've been following the Cybertruck and you just want the quick TLDR, watch Marquez Brownlee's video. So only like two or three people got under embargo. They got the trucks for multiple days. It was like Marquez and Jason Camisa, and which is the video I gave you. That was for Haggerty, which is like, I believe a vehicle review site or something to do, a vehicle media property. Anyways, last week Tesla released a Cybertruck. I'll walk you through it. So it's been 4 years in the making. Here is the origin story. You'll remember parts of it, right? So the origin story, the myth of it was that one of Elon's kid was like, man, like, how come cars like don't look like futuristic cars? Like the truck, like the Ford F1, the Ford F Series, as we've talked about here, the Ford F-150 is the best-selling car in America for the past 30, 40 years. Everyone has seen that bad boy, right? It's iconic. But that car has been the body and the frame the exact same for the past 70 years.
Yeah.
Like, we stripped down a 2023 F-150 and a 1949 F Series, identical. The pickup truck hasn't changed. Hey, it looks like it hasn't really mattered, right? That best-selling car. But Elon's son, according to this legend, asked him, one of his kids, like, hey, can what's going on here? So Elon's like, went to his head of design at Tesla. I forgot his name. He's a legend, but Elon's just like, well, what ideas can we do? And they're like, we'll do a car based on stainless steel. Let's start with the material first. We're building a pickup truck from scratch. Let's start with the material. So they go stainless steel, right? What that does is this. You don't need like the interiors and the body anymore, because stainless steel, it's called hard fucking steel. It's a patented type of alloy. It's so strong that it becomes the frame of the vehicle. Like, for most cars, there's an actual metallic frame, like hard steel frame, and then you put like light aluminum around it. But because the alloy that Tesla created, which is also used on SpaceX rockets, right? So like, this is like next level metal alloys. It's so strong. Like, you've seen the videos, right? Bulletproof, sledgehammer proof. Like,
well, they were shooting on it. They were shooting the car. Like,
they put a Tommy gun on it, a 9mm. You're probably wondering, why do you need this? And like, it's just end up in like paramilitaries. Like, that's a running joke.
No, but also just the best marketing in the world, right? Like, talk about.
Oh,
like,
my goodness.
I mean, it's just the visual of that, like shooting a car and you're good. It's just everything. Like, well, I'd love to get.
Well, let me
Jack's
address
take
a
on
couple
this,
of
but
things.
Yeah,
that's why I was a little sad Jack wasn't here, because
he's the
I
car
would
guy
love
and
Jack
brand
to be
guy.
like, I wanted him to. I know what he like. We've talked about him on the brand. He's like, the counter positioning is incredible. Every pickup truck looks the same. This is just so different. It's so polarizing, but that's the point, right? That's the entire point. There's just so many things we'll get into, but the counter positioning is one. But I will address a lot of criticisms about the stainless steel body. So I'll throw it to you, a couple criticisms. I'd like your thoughts about the stainless steel. So let me finish the stainless steel thought. It being, they built it from the outside in, basically, which is actually what happened to the DeLorean, which was the failed car from Back to the Future. It was like, let's build it externally and make it from the outside in. It's a totally different look, right? So when you have stainless steel, you can have this triangular look. There's no curves on the Cybertruck. And then, so here's criticism one: a lot of sharp edges, right? So that's something that people are concerned about.
And by the way, Rafa, if for people who haven't seen it, we should, which I'm sure most people have, but let's make sure we've thrown that on the screen, because it's beautiful. I mean, I want to get your take on how beautiful it is or not, but it's a very unique looking car either way, right? Like, it's
I really want one. My wife said there's
it
no
looks
chance.
Incredible.
But we'll
can you
decide.
imagine taking your kid to school in that, bro?
Yeah, I know, right? I think I will get one in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's really interesting, this is from the Marquez Brownlee interview, and one reason it took 4 years for them to create. Remember that when they launched it, the very viral moment when they threw the baseball into the glass. It's supposed to be like Gorilla Glass and didn't break, but it broke. It shattered the glass, right?
Yeah.
The reason they shattered that glass 4 years ago on stage was because they were testing it backstage. So the integrity of the glass was getting ruined much, right? But back to the stainless steel. So Marquez Brownlee, super interesting. He goes, so that metal is so strong, the stainless steel metal, that the way it's pressed is you have this insane, like 10,000 ton press, right? And the problem is that type of steel, when you press it, it bounces back into shape. It's like you have to hit it so hard that the way it molds is it bounces back, but you can't actually control that bounce back to 100% precision. So I don't think any two Cybertrucks will be exactly the same. Like there will be millimeters differences in the actual shape of that front piece because of how hard difficult it is to control the bounce back of pressing it. So that's part two of the stainless steel. Part one, sharp edges. Part two was not every single one will be exactly the same. Although I'm guessing Tesla will get to a point where they're going to figure that out. The third thing is, what is the problem with stainless steel? Go to your fridge, and you touch it, your fingerprints are everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like those are the main criticisms about the metal. So I'm gonna throw it to you. I'd love your take on what you think about them designing from the outside in, using metal first, and then about the stainless steel, what your concerns would be, and if you would ever get one.
Yeah, I the funny thing is, out of us three, I'm probably the least. I'm the worst person to ask about it because I literally don't own a car. I pretty much not bought a car in my adult life, except like once we were getting one for my mum, but that doesn't really count.
What was it? It
was like a Mercedes A-Class, like the small car.
Okay.
But I drove it entry level. Yeah, it was like the smaller car. We had the big one for the dad, and then mum had to get an upgrade. But yeah, so I don't drive, right? Like, so I'm not the best person to ask. I don't even know that much about cars. I'm pretty bad with cars, but just from the outside as an amateur, I think it looks sick. Like, I personally like the look of it. And it's just more how different it looks. It just looks like it's from the future. But I can imagine it's very, a lot of people might not like it because it's like, what the hell is this sort of vibe? Whereas like the regular Teslas looked kind of futuristic, but they didn't look like this, right? Like this is completely different to what else is out there. But I remember when they launched it, how long ago was this where they did the pre-sale?
2019.
Because that was the pre-sale, right?
They've had over 1 million people, almost, I think 2 million do $100 deposit. So $200 million.
Which is crazy. If you think so, yeah. How much was that?
200 million. It's an interest-free loan, essentially.
Isn't that crazy, right? Like that is crazy that you've got 200 million. Now you can go and actually make those things, use that R&D, to go make it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, they did it for every car. They did it for the Roadster. They did it for the Model 3. Yeah. Also,
the lock-in, like there's the psychological lock-in, like people who've studied like pricing and stuff like that will know, like just getting essentially, think of your e-commerce brand where they get you to do like the athletic. They like, just $1 a month. Like, so you got your credit card details there. You're locked in. You get to use something. And there's the friction of like canceling that. Yeah, even obviously $100
imagine
to
you're
thousands
1,000th in line, right? And you're like, I'm gonna cancel this $100 bucks. Like,
it's that sunk cost fallacy a little bit.
You nailed it, dude.
So once you're in, you're not really trying to. You're like, all right, you've built this image in your head. So I'm sure plenty of people won't actually follow through with it, but it's just an incredibly smart move. I don't know if other car manufacturers have done that before at that level, but this was next level anyway. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't have much more to add apart from I think it looks cool, and I'm excited to kind of like see one in person because I haven't seen one obviously in person yet.
Did you see the matte black?
No. Oh no. What do you mean? What the color? You mean?
I think it costs $5,000, but they'll matte black it for you.
Oh, that's nice.
I think it's a vine. I can't remember what it was.
Let me pull it up right now.
Let me actually throw some prices out here, right? So the one they're selling first is the I believe it's called the triple. This has three main batteries engine. I can't remember what it was. 3 battery. Anyways, 3 motors or whatever it is. The top line is 100K. So it'll go down to about 60. This is why we need a Jack here to like correct me. But dude, this is the main takeaway I'd add though. So everything I just told you this is the main point Jason Camissa made from his amazing, like you said, the production on that the Hagerty review. It's unbelievable. He says he says they typically spend 4 weeks on a video, but they only had 48 hours for this. It's unbelievable. So here's a couple of things.
Like a TV show would spend a month doing that, right? Like it's so crazy.
Unbelievable.
How good
Here's a couple of things I'll say. This is mind blowing. Everything we described, this is what Jason Kamissa said. And he's not even a Tesla fanboy. Like he did a podcast afterwards for the Carmudgeon podcast. We should actually add that. Because these two things are very eye-opening. Here's what he said. He's like, if Cybertruck only did everything we just discussed, they actually were shipping, which they started doing. They started shipping these vehicles, the Cybertruck. I saw Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit, married to Serena Williams. I saw him pick up his first Cybertruck, actually. He posted that. Awesome video. But Jason Kamissa goes, if all Tesla did was this, they would have delivered on the 2019 promise. Different looking car. But under the hood is actually insane. So there's a couple of like pretty technical concepts here that I'm going to butcher, but I'm going to walk through them. There's two main ones. The first main one is called 48 volts. And what that alludes to is the fact that for the past 2 decades, the car industry has been working on like this basically 12 volt standard. And all you need to know about 12 and 48 volts is 48 volts is clearly more than 12, right? Just know that's a lot more electricity, right? And the reasons why this matters is because think about how much electricity wiring you needed in a car in 1970. What did you need it for? Your radio, right? Or maybe that little, remember that cigarette button where you push it in and it hit that classic cigarette? But what did you need electricity for 50 years ago in a car? Nothing.
Yeah, not much. Yeah.
What do you need it for it now?
Everything.
Yeah.
That
Right? Software,
little iPad that's posted up in the car.
iPad that's on your thing, right? Everything requires electricity now.
Even the seats moving back and stuff, I'm assuming is all just electricity, right?
Dude, keep walking it through. Think through it, right?
Because before it was mechanical. So, and even the windows, like before you'd have the windows rolling, and now that was a long time ago.
No, but you're nailing it, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking through everything that requires a little bit of electricity to move things around, to run things, right? It's exploded. It's exponential now because you know the idea that basically a car, like the Tesla, they say is an iPhone on wheels, right? So the electricity requirements are significant. That also means the wiring requirements are significant. Wiring is very expensive. It's manually expensive to do in a car. So for ages, by ages I mean past decade or two, car companies have been trying to move to a 48 volt standard. 48 volt is basically what all the national transportation industries decide is as safe as you can get because it's a lot of electricity. It's a lot of electrical power running through these wires. But they're like, you know what? This is as much as we will allow. But what that does though is if you have a lot more electrical power or that power level, you need less wires. Because power loss happens from wire, right? The longer you run electricity across a wire, you're going to lose power along the way. But if you have 48 volts versus 12 volts, you'll require less wiring. And I think the number they say is like, if you move to a 48 volt standard, you will need 70% less copper and 50% less wires. That's huge savings on labor. And you're seeing where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Why hasn't traditional car industries gone to that? Bilal, what is a car manufacturer at the end of the day? An original electronic manufacturers, OEM, they're relying on thousands of suppliers, right?
Yeah, different parts, yeah.
How different
it's not
is that
vertically
Tesla?
integrated, you mean, right?
But Tesla is vertically integrated.
Yeah.
You see where I'm taking this?
Yeah.
So the problem going 48 volt standard is no single supplier is incentivized to do this, right? They're incentivized to work off the existing system because they won't get all the benefits if they go to 48 volt. Tesla will accrue all the benefits if it goes to 48 volts, which is what it did. So for the Cybertruck, it went 48 volt. That means it has 70% less copper, all things equal, 50% less wiring. And that means the weight of its car. So versus a Hummer EV, it weighs 2,600 pounds less. But the Hummer EV also has a giant battery.
Do you know what that is, like percentage-wise? Or like roughly, like is it?
I think it's 20 to 30% less. But also the Hummer, to be fair, Hummer has a much bigger battery, so it has better range.
Yeah.
I think the top range for these Cybertrucks is 300 miles, which is not like crazy good. Like they expected 500 miles. So like the other criticisms about Cybertruck was 2019. They're saying it'd be 20,000 cheaper and also more range, but you'll get there, right? So the main thing is, so I told you everything about the 48 volt. So huge step up. And a lot of the smartest people I've seen commentate on this, there's a criticism of 40 volt is that there'll probably be a lot of recalls. But if you're buying a $100,000 Cybertruck, you kind of know that you're buying a next gen car, right?
Yeah.
And and like there's this
By the way,
thought that they
people
might
getting these right. You said Alexis Ohanian is picking this up. He's already picked this up in person.
People are picking it up. Yeah.
So is it just like rolling out? So like, we're gonna start seeing them on the roads.
You're gonna start seeing them on the road. They're,
while we were talking, I've been looking at Tesla.com/Cybertruck. And I mean, we could put it on the screen, but man, this website is so beautifully made. It's so like the
so
imagery
well done,
is
right?
so sick. I mean, in fact, I'm just going to share it on my screen now because while we're discussing it, you could keep saying what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'll talk through a couple. The second thing, so yeah, Bilal, think about the 48 11,000 pound towing capacity, which is basically on par with F-150s. The bed is also on par. This is hilarious, right? The stainless steel, they're smashing it with a sledgehammer. But Bilal, let me go back to what I was saying about Jason Camissa.
Yeah.
So if you actually watch his review, he doesn't talk about a single thing related to towing or construction, which you'd think would be the main audience for this vehicle, right? But the reality is that that's not the main audience. The main audience for the Cybertruck is kind of what you said. It's people that want this insanely futuristic.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think there is a world where the construction industry contractors make sense though, right? Because first of all, the stainless steel, it doesn't get dinged and everything. Because I mean, you're F-350, you're in a parking lot, you're getting dinged left, right, and center, right? Yeah. And the other thing is like, because you can run battery equipment straight in from the Cybertruck. So you're running all your equipment from the Cybertruck. But here's the other thing. This is perhaps the biggest leap forward. I mentioned the 48 volt standard. Here's where that is really applied. So the Cybertruck uses something called steer-by-wire. It is the first mass-produced car that does not have a physical connection between the steering wheel and the front wheels. I want you to think about that for a second. There is no physical connection between the steering wheel and the front wheel. It's all sensors and software.
Really?
Okay? Yeah, it's. I know
so
that
what
sounds
happens
scary.
when you turn? So wait. When you make a turn left, what's happening with that? What signal is it? The back
There's
wheel?
a sensor. Yeah, no. There's 3 sensors. And they basically all coordinate via software to decide. They're gonna read your turn and decide what is the best between the rear and the front. Okay, I know the obvious criticism. So I actually posted a video from Jason Camissa's video online. Elon reposted that, so shout out to that. I got a lot of got a lot of hype from that. So the first thought, and I saw it was, I had to mute my tweet because of the Elon haters. They're like, oh, we're gonna trust Elon with this software, but these idiots didn't watch the video. By wire, which means you don't have a direct connection between the steering mechanism and the whatever you're trying to turn. That's been on commercial planes for 25 years. 35 years actually. 35 years. 1988, commercial jets started using fly-by-wire, which means that cockpit steering device was not connected to the rudders in the back. So they've been doing this for over 3 decades. A throttle by wire has been in cars since BMW launched in 1988. So by wire technology, where you don't have to have that direct connection, has been working for over 3 decades.
So, but no car has done that, I take it.
No mass production car. Lexus is working on it. Everybody's moving towards it. And the reason is this. Because when you have a direct connection, here's the thing. You know when you're turning, you have to do the hand. People aren't watching, listeners.
Yeah.
You know, when you're turning as much radius as
multiple turns,
you're putting the hand over, right? But in steer-by-wire, they already know what you want. So you're kind of, you're doing this. You don't need to do this anymore. You're doing like a slight
nudge for people only listening.
But basically what it does is your turning radius is insane. The handling is insane.
So it's going to take a little getting used to.
That's the Jason Camissa thought that. He took it onto a go-kart course. The go-kart course guy is like, there's no chance you can handle this truck on this course. Started doing it. He destroyed an actual go-kart on a go, taking every corner. And he's like, the learning curve was like instant. He's like, I thought it would take long to feel this difference. So those are two things. The 40 volt and the steer-by-wire are two things that the car industry has been talking about for decades. Cybertruck did it. All right? So what I'm trying to say is this. Let me sum up my Cybertruck thoughts with this. There's two worlds where it's going to happen. They're going to mass produce it, but I think there's going to be a lot of like mass production difficulties for because of how difficult the steel is to work with. I think that there might be holding back supply. That's fine. They have a massive wait list. But the comparison is a Model X. The Model X had remember the wing doors? The doors that open up funny? I think the gull wing doors. Elon said if he knew how difficult those gull wing doors were to manufacture, he never would have done it. But he did it. The Model X, though, sells a fraction of the Model Y, which is basically the SUV, the sub SUV which is now the best-selling car in the world, by the way. So the Model Y, maybe Toyota Corolla, but in recent quarters, the Model Y has been the best.
Sorry, when you said the best-selling car, you mean in terms of
Period.
volume or revenue?
Period. Volume, number of cars sold.
Really?
I'm talking.
That's wild.
It's insane.
I also love how you still got the ketones in your hand.
Yeah, I'm holding it, bro. I already finished it. Thanks for the shot, So what I'm saying is this. I think that the Cybertruck will probably be more like the Model X. As in, they're going to use it. They'll have people that love it. It'll be less volume than like these more traditional looking ones, like the 3, which I have, or the Y. But the technological breakthroughs that they're making, the steer-by-wire, the 48 volt, that's going to be going to their next cars. So I'll summarize with this. This car, if it was just the shape that it came out in, would have been mind-blowing. But they actually, as a vehicle, because they constructed it from first principles and the beginning, they are another 10 years ahead of the car industry. It's insane. It's actually insane. I don't know if this will contribute ultimately to the bottom line, but, and we talked about it on the podcast, Elon said that the multi-trillion-dollar valuation of Tesla hinges on automated self-driving. So, but I mean, like this is just I think 40 volt will help with that for self-driving. No, certainly, because you need a lot of electrical power to run ML models, right? But anyways, man, that's kind of the TLDR.
Yeah, beautiful breakdown. Love that. Thanks for sharing all that. I mean, so just to summarize, you would love to get one of these, all jokes aside. Oh yeah. I think it's an amazing car, man. I think it looks insane. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be cool to see it in person because while we were talking, I did Google the
right?
black one as well.
Oh yeah, slick.
The black one looks like Batman or like some futuristic Batman version, Batmobile or something like that. But
I didn't even mention the main thing. The last thing I'll mention is like the viral video that came out was it did a drag race against a Porsche 911 and beat the Porsche 911 with a Porsche 911 being towed in the back. So like,
oh, that's wild.
That was just great marketing, right? And 2.6, I believe was for the 0 to 60 and 2.6. But anyways, we can go on to the next thing,
Beautiful.
which is Elon related. So
Love
now
it.
I'm going to start asking you questions.
Go on. Let's start.
Right?
Let's summarize what happened first of all, because what's the TLDR? He was having great chat on Cybertruck. Let's move on to Elon versus media. This is not a new thing, right? Elon's been talking about mainstream media for a while, and beyond the media, it was about advertising on Twitter's platform, on X's platform. And so could you tell us the summary of what happened in terms of why people were pulling off advertising dollars in the first place, or what they said they were doing? And just to clarify, I think it was big companies like Disney, which is the one he eventually, Apple, Walmart, Nike, maybe, a bunch of big companies. And so they all basically are boycotting the platform. And this has happened a little bit of time ago. Like this was a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever. So what was the summary there? Because I think it was something to do with a tweet that he responded to. So what happened there?
So about a month ago, there was a tweet related to Israel and this like right-wing theory called the Great Replacement Theory. But the whole point I'm saying is this. So last Wednesday, he went to the DealBook Summit thrown by, I think, New York Times, and he was interviewed by Andrew Ross Sorkin. And this is where the big hubbub came out, where he said, go F yourself to advertisers, don't want to advertise on Twitter, which I think at this point, Raf already played the clip earlier. But it was perceived that he had said something anti-Semitic. He got a lot of blowback from that. But I think...
Just to clarify, because what he said, he responded to a tweet and said... He didn't. What did he say? Not I agree.
No, this is the absolute. No, he said this is the truth. The thrust of the argument was effectively that he believed, or the argument of the tweet was that a lot of left-wing woke liberals, which includes people of the Jewish faith, were agreeing with some woke policies that turned out to have shown over the past 2 months, since 10/7 in Israel, where there's been a lot of talk of pro-Hamas, basically arguments against the state of Israel. Well, these same organizations, which were being supported by Jewish intellectuals 2 to 3 years ago, it basically, the argument being made was, these organizations supported, look how they feel about you now. It was all tied in with the fact that this account also just had a bad reputation. And then I think Elon said during his DealBook Summit, he's like, I was trying to address, it was really dumb what I said. Really dumb because it was poor context, and like what he was actually trying to go after in his saying was these nonprofit organizations like Media Matters, which I'll discuss now, that are basically using these left-wing nonprofit organizations to apply pressure onto X and Twitter, and basically tell them not to advertise. So the Media Matters thing that came out was, you probably saw this headline, was that a lot of big name brands were seeing quote unquote white supremacist and Nazi content next to their ads. Yeah. And Elon and Twitter or X sued Media Matters. And the thrust, so I read that lawsuit. It's quite interesting. The thrust of it was that Media Matters was basically starting an account from fresh and only following white supremacist accounts and like Fortune 50 accounts, and basically refreshing the feed, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of times until they could screenshot an ad for...
Oh, right. Got it.
Yeah,
so... In between those two
exactly.
things. Got it.
So that,
it's like, okay, Apple is next to this bad content. Got it.
The argument of the lawsuit is like, this is not a representative feed, and it's basically manipulation. And I'll tell you what's interesting is, I believe it might have been the Washington Post and New York Times in the 90s got sued and lost the case against one of the big car manufacturers for saying that their pickup or SUV was faulty, and without actually saying, what actually happened is like, we actually bought a vehicle and like fucked around with the engine and like tested it until the point where something bad happened. So they lost that lawsuit, like this media publication, when they published something that turned out to be unrepresentative. So the argument here, I don't know how the case is going to resolve, but reading based on that lawsuit, I'm like, hey, it looks kind of sketchy, right? And it wouldn't be the first time actually where there's a nonprofit organization which is applying pressure on basically big tech, whether it be Facebook or YouTube or X. And so I'll add the following points, 2 points. Before I ask you, because this is right down your domain, and your former employer, which we have to mention for a week, YouTube dealt with this, right? In 2016, 2017, there's a huge ad boycott because of PewDiePie. So people argue, though, that these organizations, I love your thought on this, a lot of these NGOs, they're basically a way for governments and special interests to suppress speech, because they get to go to these social networks and be like, hey, man, looks like I found a white supremacist content next to this Walmart ad, not telling them the fact that they basically manipulated the platform and destroying that.
Love the voice, by the way.
Yeah,
Tom.
you know what I mean?
Beautifully done,
I think it's kind of sketchy. And so I'm going to throw this to you. What do you think about that lawsuit? And could you actually walk through why it was that YouTube was able to survive their boycott and Facebook survived a boycott in 2020s? Same deal. Facebook's been dealing with boycotts for the past decade. But why do people keep going back? Because it works.
Because it works, exactly.
Yeah. So I love your thoughts on the Media Matters part, the YouTube and the Facebook.
So I don't know enough about the Media Matters part apart from what you just shared there. But what I'll say is, I think the Twitter or the X situation, I'd break down into two parts. One is advertisers wanting to advertise on Twitter in the first place, beyond what Elon said, if it works well, and the brand safety part, which is still related. This is before the boycott part. And that goes across all the platforms, not just Twitter and X. Though X maybe is unique because there's so much political discussion. There's a lot of like crazy stuff that goes on there. And Elon's taken a stance of more of a free speech, in air quotes, platform. So there might be more stuff that stays on there. There's also, I think, adult content on Twitter, on X.
Never seen it.
Yeah. And so that's one part. And the second is the boycott specifically, and what happens to big companies when basically a narrative forms and you get tweeted at so many times that you then need to do PR stuff, essentially, right? So that's the two parts I'd break it down to. The first part is, does this platform work in the first place? So all these companies are probably, spending some money on Twitter and X in general, because they're massive companies with billion-dollar ad budgets, and they, what normally happens, you've got a CMO and then you've got all the people underneath, and they say, here's our budget for the year, where should we spend our money? And somewhere along that line, someone allocates a budget and they'll say 50% to Google, 40% to Facebook, 5% to Twitter, and blah, blah, blah. And so whatever that split is, they normally would put something on Twitter. It's just a lot less a lot of the time. And so the reason for that, in my opinion, is because for a long time it hasn't worked as well. And that's kind of the summary. That doesn't mean it doesn't work at all. It's just for what most people want to do online in terms of digital marketing. Why you use digital marketing is because you can target better, you can measure better, you can scale it up and down better. And those two things work really well on Facebook and Google stacks. I say stack because it's not just facebook.com, it's Instagram, WhatsApp, all of the properties, and then Google, YouTube, Google Display Network,
walk through like a brand, primarily brand, which is what X has been, versus
direct response, which is click my ad and buy something, or e-commerce ad, retargeting ad. Those
super
are
measurable.
Very measurable. And even the brand stuff is measurable, but the metrics you use are different. So it's more about impressions. How many people saw my ad? Did they engage with it? How long did they spend engaging with it? Do they? And then you can do studies where you'll say, did you recognize this brand in the last month? Did you see it in the last month? And stuff like that. So for that, I think Twitter probably, that was always their positioning. That was like moment-based brand marketing, like Super Bowl's happening, American Idol final or whatever, like something on TV, make sure you're there, the Oscars. So that, for that, it's always worked. But we've talked about this on the pod before, like when Elon came in, he brought in a new head of ads, basically. I forgot her name, but we talked about
Linda
on the pod.
Yaccarino?
Exactly. I think, did she come from NBC?
She's a CEO, but like technically she's not really,
Exactly.
She ran a $13 billion business at NBCU for their advertising. So she's like very traditional, right? Like she'll do everything you mentioned. She'll go to these, what is it called? Like when they do the
upfronts.
Upfronts, yeah. Where you basically get these massive commitments. But
and so, and I don't know if she's still there, what's going on. I'm assuming she's still there, right?
Yeah, she's still there.
She's still there. Okay. And actually, funnily enough, last night I was using Peacock for the first time.
That's her. That was her project.
Yeah, because that's under NBC, right? And it was the first time I noticed that we were watching a movie, rom-com night, you got to do that once in a while. And I pressed pause to go make a cup of tea or something, came back, and there were ads on the pause screen. I've never seen anyone do that on like Netflix.
Great inventory.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, wow, that's actually kind of an innovative. Like, I don't want to see more ads, but as the marketing brain in me was like, oh, that's actually an interesting impression they just served. Yeah, it's the geekiest way of thinking about it. But like, I didn't even think of that as being... like in Europe, you could never do this, right? Like it will piss people off so much. But in America, it's like you're watching the Arsenal game and they'll be just zooming shit on the screen already. And I'm like, oh man. So that can kind of work here. Anyway, that's going a bit off topic, but I'm saying she came from that background. She understands that brand mentality. And there's been a few kind of things getting in the way for them, right? One is we've gone from a low interest rate environment to high inflation. People have had to go from just growth to profitable. And that is related. Because,
well, that's why the group chats were quiet for 2 years.
Exactly. They've been quiet for a couple of years. Hopefully we're bringing it back. But essentially what that means is people, when I talked about the CMO giving a budget and then it trickling down, let's just say what happened. You've got $100 billion of marketing that went to 80 or went to 50. So straight away, you're going to have cuts. You're going to say, well, I've got to pull it from somewhere. And most of the time, for a lot of brands, they just can't afford the brand dollars anymore. It's kind of frothy money because you're going to have to go and prove, why did we spend money on this? Did it actually bring ROI, return on return on ad spend? Return on ad spend.
ROAS.
Exactly.
This is pronounced ROAS?
Yeah, ROAS is fine. Yeah, exactly. So I meant to say return on investment, but both, they're both the same thing. So anyway, so that's normally what happens. So I think that was already happening to Twitter and X. So they were kind of getting hit with that. Then Elon came in and people were like, wait a minute, he became this political figure. As people are already kind of anti him on one camp.
It gave people an easy reason to walk away.
Exactly.
But they were going to do it anyways.
They were going to do it anyway. Exactly.
But this is what I'm saying. So like, I think you framed it perfectly for now.
Yeah.
This Bob Iger, CEO of Disney battle.
Yeah.
Because Bob Iger was, I think he might have had the session 2 or 3 guests before Elon.
Yeah.
And he basically said, we don't want to, like right now, X isn't the right place for our brand.
Yeah.
He forgets to admit that Disney is not a perfect animal, right? Disney is very criticizable. And, and I mean, for example, Disney does projects with TikTok. Listeners of NIA know how Trung Phan feels about TikTok. There's 2 parts of TikTok that are the problem. Well, there's this big research report going that like TikTok actually was the most anti-Semitic platform of all the big ones, Instagram, X, or TikTok, in terms of creating. I don't even know how to measure that. That could be another Media Matters situation.
Yeah.
You remember, like we were talking about, it's like, how do you even, like, the thing with all these like research reports that you see, like when you actually look at the methodology, you're like, this is ridiculous, right?
Yeah. A lot of the time, it's and it doesn't matter because the headline spreads.
That's
all people
headline,
want nowadays.
Right? This is.
Yeah, and so that brings us to the second part we said, right, which is beyond, is it working, is it not working? Now it's a PR thing because,
exactly,
he said, if he says something that is cancelable, which, you could argue he's done that multiple times where people have tried to cancel him or whatever.
I will say this, in the old regime. This is the bigger picture to me. Whether or not you believe Elon is a free speech absolutist, because, the criticism has been like, they're still taking down stuff in different countries, and he's changed from free speech purist to like free speech within the bounds of a law of a country, right? Which is what he's said, because he's realized with Twitter or X, this is how.
Which is basically what all the people before said as well. It's a line where you decide.
They basically say he's speed running moderation is how they're saying it, right? Like he's coming in and he's speed running the moderation, and but the point is, I loved it. I mean, I'm gonna say straight up, it's like, dude.
So what he said, saying,
so many people have FU money. Who actually says FU, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's an interesting point of view because, so let's summarize what happened. So he gets asked, like, what do you think of Disney and others pulling their money? And he basically said, well, if you're going to try to blackmail me with money. I loved it.
Yeah, dude. He's like, you're going to blackmail me? With money? Wait, you know what's so funny though? It's like when he actually takes money, he's like, this is like the last person you can blackmail with money. He obviously wants to see X exist. But I love that he just said it. It's like, you're going to blackmail me with money? Like,
now, what I will say, and I kind of respect what he did in a way, I will say the idea of boycotting using money is actually one of the best means of protest in echoes if it wasn't from big companies that also do shady stuff, right? So if this was individuals being like, I don't want to put my money into Walmart because they support whatever, that, like, I'm all for that. Like, go and.
But here's the thing: it's all hypocrisy, right?
It is
with the later in that interview, he goes, Andrew Ross Sorkin's asked him about Tesla, and he goes, I again agree or disagree. This is what he said. He goes, Tesla's done more to transition to a sustainable economy than any other company. I'm the CEO of Tesla, which means as an individual, I've done more than any other individual to transition to sustainable economy. And then he goes, I hate people that do evil but say good things. And he just says, F them. So like that, I mean, those 2 parts, I think, is the larger takeaway here. Because I think the criticism which you kind of addressed of, at the end of the day, here's the reality. if X was as performative as Facebook and Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, people will still be advertising because they're all hypocrites.
Yeah. It's a political thing. You're doing what is needed for the perception, which is, to be honest, at that level is kind of what you do.
But money outweighs the politics, though. If the financial decision is actually not our ass. Does anybody say our ass? ROAS? ROAS. But the whole TLDR is this. Is like every brand that said that they're going to boycott YouTube and Facebook, within months they were back.
They're back,
These people, there's no integrity here, right?
So that's the point. That's why I said the PR thing. Because
there's no integrity.
It's literally just people are tagging you and they're saying you should pull your ads from Twitter or from Facebook, whatever, because they're doing X, Y, Z. And then it becomes an emergency PR thing, right? And I get it. Look, again, we're going to talk about Munger in a minute and incentives, right? Like this is a perfect example of this. At that level, it's all politics.
Well, what's his quote?
Yeah.
Tell me the incentive, I'll tell you the outcome,
result.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so here's the incentive is if you've got lots of people trying to cancel your brand in air quotes, Disney, Nike, Apple, whoever, I don't, to be honest, blame them for taking action they do. I'm not saying I would do the same, but I'm also not a CEO of a public company. So it's a different game you're playing. And so, we could be all day talking about ethics of big companies. The truth is all of the big companies, Apple, Google, Facebook, TikTok, Tesla, Elon Musk, all of them you can criticize to the world and back, right? Like they have all done stuff as easily that you can say, wait a minute, you weren't consistent on this case. Even in the current Elon discussion, without getting political again, he was there with Netanyahu just in, did he go to Israel, right? Was it?
Yeah, he was on
recently,
he went
right?
to the border towns.
I didn't even follow that whole thing properly because I've kind of checked out. There's so many things going on there. There's a lot you can criticize on both sides here. So we don't even have to go down that line of logic. What I will say is I respect, like you said, what's the point of having FU money if you don't exercise that once in a while? At the same time, I think Elon ultimately will do what is to his benefit as well. And so I think in a way, like if he actually thought they were going to come back, I don't know if he would be saying that. And I think that it's gone kind of past that stage where he's like, oh, they're gone. Like I need to kind of stand up for myself here and like, put a line in the sand.
Well, they did announce, to your point, they're like, hey, we're going to focus on small, medium-sized businesses, which is Facebook's. Yeah. But it comes back to what you mentioned at the beginning. It's like, it's got to be the targeting, right? You got to have good targeting. Yeah. And, I would give a shout out to our boy Ramp Capital. I know he listens to the pod every now and then. He had this hysterical tweet, man. He goes, clicking on every single X ad I see to keep this platform alive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I was like, I feel the same, man. Here's the thing is like, you know what, man? This is the reality. This town square, free for all, everybody's voice gets heard. It's just not great for advertising. That's just the reality.
Well, let's talk about, because that was a really key point here. It's about brand safety, right? So from an advertiser point of view, you said earlier, how did Facebook and YouTube get around it? Let me tell you straight up, the stuff that gets flagged on YouTube.
Oh, their moderation team is massive.
It's massive, but also even now with a massive moderation team, the stuff that gets uploaded is insane, right? Like, hopefully it doesn't spread enough because someone
tell people
flags
about the bin, please. What's the bin?
Oh, well, the bin we've talked about on the pod is there's a bin, which is a trash can for Americans, where literally you get these. Back in the day, my first ever job, thankfully I didn't have to do it, but I'm pretty sure Sheryl Sandberg, when she started Google, she was in the bin. I'm pretty sure she was there.
What is the bin?
Approving ads. You're there.
So is it
on
a
room?
Screen? Is it a room
it's like
with
on
one
your
computer?
But you basically have a queue. Can you imagine it all in one room? But you basically got one, you're on a screen and it basically is ad approvals or in this case, video approvals.
And it's shown you, so she's seen some effed up content.
Well, that would be YouTube. So she probably didn't do that. But this is mostly just when you do it and you're 21 years old, fresh out of school. This is what's funny though. Is like, they're like Stanford grads. I remember my friend, he's got a first from Oxford in physics in masters. And he's there for 12 months or like 6 months approving ads. And I'm like, this is a wild thing.
So wait, so he would have seen some pretty wild ads though.
Well, he wasn't doing YouTube. So to be fair, that Google ad text is not that crazy. It's just like someone used a word they're not supposed to use or trademark or whatever. But they would basically, it will be a human review back in the day. I don't know how it works now. And you basically being approved, disapprove. and you have to give your logic and write, or this is disapproved for this reason or whatever. So that's the bin. In YouTube, you obviously have that, but you've got some crazy stuff, right? Because people can upload anything, pretty much.
Well, let's
maybe
be
now
honest,
they've got more controls, yeah.
You're seeing the worst stuff in the world.
You're seeing the worst stuff, yeah, exactly. We don't even have to say it.
We don't
but
have to
the worst
say
of
it.
the
You
worst
know
stuff,
what we're
you
talking
know what
about.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so people can upload that, and the point was, YouTube got criticized for that, rightly so, and Facebook, Instagram got criticized for similar stuff. Like, how do you're the top 5 companies in the world, right? Like you're more valuable than any company in history, pretty much up there. And how we still getting our ads, which is what makes this whole platform work, and how your company makes money. How are my ads as a YouTube advertiser showing up against a war crime or a terrible thing that's happening? And so they had to basically reprioritize and say, basically perception wise and through their actions. So they had to go and hire enough people, and a lot of that I'm sure is outsourced to like specialist teams by this point, but they had to basically ramp up that process, and they needed to create AI related tools that will do a lot of that for you and visually say, oh, that looks like a war crime happening and we need to flag that. It looks a little bad.
I mean, I'm not laughing. I'm just
but it's crazy.
It's so true. It's literally what you said. There's an AI system which says this looks like a war crime and we can't upload it, right?
Yeah.
Which is so. I mean, let me finish this thought with I think this is a meaty conversation because it gives a 360 on it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the reality is this. I think you brought up a great point, actually. I think Elon probably saw over the past year that these brand safety folk, whatever, they might be woke, they might not be. At the end of the day, it's a Charlie Munger thing. What's their incentive? They want to keep their job, right? And they have X amount of budget to spend every year, and they're just gonna be like, you know what? And this is reality. Facebook and Instagram
it's
are
not
much more
worth
censored.
The fight.
They're much more censored. And Twitter should exist. X, under the way Elon has it, has to exist, in my opinion. There has to be that single thing which is truly, listen, anything goes as anything goes. It's just a reality. You can't, otherwise everything's top down. Otherwise, everything is what happened in the 2020 election. You have 3 people in San Francisco deciding to get rid of this Hunter Biden story from the oldest newspaper in America, the New York Post, right? This Hunter Biden laptop story would turn out to be true. 3 people in San Francisco at Twitter decided we didn't want this on there. So the exchange, though, is that this actually isn't a good advertising business. That is the absolute reality. But as we talked about months ago when they renamed from Twitter to X, this AI play, man, it's very serious. I think the XAI play is going to be what salvages this company and what they're going to be able to take it public.
That's the big bet, right?
It's real-time information.
You've been using it, right?
I've been using it. It does have personality, which in the same way that Cybertruck stands out, it's how XAI stands out, Grok. It's just different, right?
Yeah.
And actually, a really smart thing I read was, at the end of the day, the fighting that happens, ideological fighting, which is what everything comes down to at the end of the day. If it's not war, it's words, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
The ideological battlefield is X still. And that is getting trained. That's training Grok, which is kind of scary too. It's the ideological battlefield, the way you use rhetoric, the way you use evidence, the way you dunk on people, it's all happening on X. And that's extremely valuable. That's a 1-for-1 training data.
Yeah,
so
100%.
That's what I say. I think that was a good summary of what happened.
Yeah, and we can move on to the next topic. The one last thing I wanted to say about the moderating content, just really quickly, is I was just looking up while we're talking. On YouTube, there's 3.7 million videos uploaded every day. And just in terms of duration of time, that's basically 31 years worth of content. So if you sat there a day, and I mean, I don't know if this is completely accurate, this is on some random website for 2023. But whatever it is, it's a crazy amount of content. But the point I bring that up is to say, you can't have a human reviewing all that. And so that's why, similarly to imagine,
or you can put someone in the bin.
You can put a few people in the bin. But the point is, it has to be technical solutions, and it's similarly to, we've talked about the music stuff in the past when YouTube got sued around music copyright stuff. You couldn't just have humans doing this, and you needed to come up with a technical solution. And similarly for Twitter, it needs to be, if they wanted to do it, they need to first of all say to everyone, we hear what you're saying. He might not have to concede to the big companies and say like, oh, we're doing this just because of you. But we do understand that we need to take illegal stuff down, which he's already said, but we're going to take that more seriously by doing these things, and we're investing in it. But I don't think they're doing that, right? Because it's not.
Bilal,
yeah,
you need to redirect your clients to buy some X ads. This thing can't die, brother.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What the interesting thing is, when everyone comes off, we talk about here on Bitcoin all the time, the supply and demand. When everyone goes off a platform, that often there's often
oh yeah, there's definitely there's good opportunity. Yeah,
there's less people buying. There's less of a competitive market. So I'm sure when less people on there, you're going to be. There's definitely people on X talking about stuff, so you can reach them. I just wish, like, if there were 3 things I wish
they're talking about stuff. You might not like what they're talking about, but they're definitely talking.
You just need to know that, you got to just allow for the fact it's going to show up against some wild stuff sometimes. And personally, I don't find, like, as a user, I don't think it matters too much. Like, well, I know that the video or the ad I'm seeing is not related to the content, but a lot of people don't. All right, great chat there, Trung. Let's get on to the Munger discussion. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, legend in our world, has a lot of incredible one-liners, funny quotes, interviews. Obviously, the book is a classic as well. So what do you want to talk about with Munger? You said you want to talk a little bit about his background and maybe a few of the things that were most resonant with you. Yeah,
because Bilal pointed out correctly that this is Thread Boy Central, so we didn't want to overdo it. But I will say I think Charlie Munger actually has an impact on my life, not like.
For sure.
I just love his joke is that he's a book with legs. Like, he just loves reading. Like, I love reading, and he's my excuse to love reading. Except I'm not a billionaire investor. But like, his large lessons, his takeaways is 2 things he said. 3 things. We mentioned one of them was, tell me the incentive, I'll tell you the result. He talks about getting wiser every day, and he says the greatest gift you can give somebody else is like just to help them learn more. And I mean, dude, he's well, people don't know. A lot of people, especially these, I'm guessing a lot of these Thread Boy casts don't know. The biggest lesson from his life, I think, and a lot of people have mentioned this, is the resilience. Like, when he was 31 years old, he was divorced and broke. His son, 9-year-old son Teddy, had leukemia, and at that time there was no cure for leukemia. So, it was brutal. So at 31, like, think about it. His 9-year-old son died, divorced, lost all his money, was broke from the divorce, just kept going. And
what was he doing before?
He went to Harvard Law School. Never actually had a full undergraduate degree. Went to the military. Harvard Law School, real estate investor, and a lawyer. So his law firm, he was an extremely successful lawyer, but he realized billing people hourly wasn't a great way to build long-term wealth.
You've been reading that Naval thread before it existed.
He didn't. He was the original Naval thread.
He
right?
was the original Naval thread.
So no, but you nailed it. Is like, and he only wanted wealth for one reason. He just wanted independence, and a lot of that was from his family came up through the Great Depression, and he had relatives that lost everything. And he saw what happens when, it's quite philosophical. Like, this is less the Thread Boy stuff. Just like, this is the non-finance business stuff. It's just, if you don't have independence, like, you can't do anything, right? Yeah. It's like you're always at the whim of somebody else. And he wanted to be a voraciously independent thinker, which is what he was. And his relationship with Warren Buffett, he's 6 years older than Warren Buffett. It's crazy. They've been buddies for over 60 years. And Charlie's influence on Berkshire Hathaway. So he did some legal stuff for Berkshire. And then Buffett basically told him, was like, listen, man, you got a gigabrain. He was like, Buffett, Munger was the first person that Buffett met, and Buffett realized this guy's on my level, like intellectually. Yeah. And they're crazy. They're both from Omaha. Munger worked at Buffett's grandfather's like convenience store, a grocery store growing up. It's like, I was thinking about this, like, 2 of the greatest investors ever from Omaha, it's like the Beatles. It's like you have 4 guys from Liverpool. Yeah. Right? Like, what is Liverpool? It's like this at the time. In the 60s, Liverpool is what? Like a steel town?
Yeah,
like
it's kind of like an industrial town, little.
It's just unlikely, right? It's like you have 2 of the greatest investors from Omaha, Nebraska, the Midwest. And But here's a big thing with Charlie Munger. Before you hit us with some of the psychology stuff that you found, but Munger was the guy that told Buffett that you, instead of buying a fair company at a great price, you buy a great company at a fair price. Just the idea being, he instilled into Buffett the buy and hold and mentality. Before that, Buffett would actually go looking for underpriced stocks, like me. And except that, and waiting to buy and sell, right? He called them cigar butts that had a few more puffs in them. I bought a couple of cigar
butts. Yeah.
I bought a few cigar butts in 2021, and it turns out they had 0 puffs in them. But so they were together for 60 years, and they bought. So Buffett went from this school of Benjamin Graham, where he tried to find a company that's undervalued,
the value
whether or not it was
investor
good.
school, right?
Yeah, whether or not it was a good company, you just actually just trying to find if it was a deal, and then you just found a good company. Even if it wasn't quote unquote a deal, you just accepted that it'd be there for a long time. It had a great moat, so it just compound. So you have companies like Gillette, Amex, Coca-Cola, and then Apple in recent years. And that's Buffett said he's the guy that made Buffett. So that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Poor
Charlie.
So
go on. Poor Charlie. Sure. Go on.
Hit it. I'm hitting you now.
All right, so you shared this. This is 25 psychological tendencies from the Psychology of Human Misjudgment by Charlie Munger. Did you want to talk about any of these? I mean, because we could do 5 episodes on all the ideas.
So I'll just walk through this. I'll do this. I'm going to give you his overarching philosophy, and then I'd love for you just to pick a couple that you.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that.
So like he has so many quotable quotes, but like, again, his overarching philosophy, it's not about business, it's about life, right? Like he's like, his whole point is it's psychologically difficult to buy and hold, right? Because he said the way to make money isn't buying or selling, it's just waiting. And most people just can't wait. This is the reality. Most people can't wait. Patience is difficult, right? People are antsy. People want the new next thing. People want action. That is psychologically difficult. And a lot of people ask, hey, what should I do with my life? But like the first main talk that they transcribed for Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is his famous book, a collection of his speeches. It's a speech he gave at Harvard Westlake High School for, I think, his 5th kid that graduated. So grade 12 speech. It had nothing to do. It wasn't like what you should do with your life. He did the opposite. He called it inversion.
Yeah.
What shouldn't you do with your life?
Yeah.
And the example he gave was a Johnny Carson speech. Johnny Carson basically said, I can't tell you what to do with your life, but I can tell you what not to do if you want to live a happy life. It's like, don't become an alcoholic, don't be envious, and don't be resentful. He's like, if you don't do those 3 things, you are on the right path of living a decent life. And so like, I think a lot of his stuff is like, what not to do. Like his famous quote is like, tell me where I'm going to die so I don't go there, right? It's like, tell me what not to do. So I think a lot of this, the reason why this psychology talk is so famous is he's like, we humans have like, like thinking fast, slow, like those ideas is like a lot of like heuristics and biases. He's like, just don't do these things or be aware of it, right? So, and short circuit them. So not short circuit them, but like address them knowing that they happen. So I love your thoughts on a few that you like.
Yeah. And so, similarly, I've followed his stuff for a while. Like he has some incredible kind of ideas that genuinely that one inversion is one that really actually stuck with me because I think where I first came across it properly, like I'd heard of the idea, I read the quote, but I think where it actually became applicable in my life is, let's say 5 years ago when I left my last job, I became self-employed. And at that stage, you kind of say, well, what do I want to do? What should I spend my time doing? And I remember, so I just pulled up my notes from Andrew Wilkinson, who was on Creator Lab around then. Maybe it was 2019 or 2020. So I have my notes from Creator Lab where I pulled all these Munger isms.
Oh, that's awesome, man. You had Andrew. I didn't realize you had Andrew on
yeah,
the
I had
Creator
Andrew
Lab.
Wilkinson. And Andrew, people don't know, he's founder of Tiny. Great guy. He's a Canadian
Victoria,
guy as well.
BC.
Exactly.
Trying to build the Berkshire internet companies.
Exactly. And so that's why the whole episode, part of the episode was about mental models that he was a fan of, especially Munger, because he's
been quite close to Munger over the past couple of years. Well, like
exactly,
he's visited
because they had
at dinner there,
dinners and all that stuff. Exactly. So I'm just pulling out the ones that I've written down here, but that inversion one really stuck with me because it sounds so obvious, but until you actually have to do it, it's not really that useful. And then I looked backwards and I said, oh, this actually I've seen multiple times. So for example, it's very difficult to actually say you quit your job. You're like, what am I going to do? Right. Yeah. There's different ways of looking at that. You can do the ikigai stuff. You can do the, I like this energy, Wait,
hold on. Tell people the ikigai thing.
Yeah. Let me just pull up the actual, because
it's like the multiple Venn diagram, right? Like
yeah.
What you're good at.
Yeah.
What you can make money.
What you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, what you're good at. And there's
Thread Boys love that one.
Thread Boy love that. But to be honest, it's actually very useful because like it's one of those things that you know intuitively, but until you see it. So for example, what you love and what the world needs can be a mission. What you love and what you're good at, it could be a passion. What you can get paid for and what you're good at is a profession. So there's all these different overlaps. You can look that up on Wikipedia basically. But so that's one way of doing it, but even that is difficult, right? And like every few years, I kind of go through that process. Like right now, I've been doing the same thing for the last 4 or 5 years. It's been great. I'll probably eventually get to another chapter again.
Well, what is it? Tell me, what is it that you did not want to do?
Exactly. And that's what I remember writing this down. I don't know where it is right now, but I remember saying, okay, this is really difficult, but what is the opposite? So what are the things I don't like doing?
The bin. I do not want to do the bin.
Definitely don't want to bin. But the second thing was I was looking at my calendar and I'd be like and I was looking at pictures and I was like, what were the things professionally that I love doing? And also specifically what did I hate? Because that's a lot easier to identify and avoid. So for example, I hate being in meetings I don't need to be in. Yeah, so much so that pretty much now I don't do meetings unless it's like I really need to do it or they really need me to be on a call or something. And normally, even those I take on like a walk. I don't like being in front of a computer where people, like 20 people in a room. Like it's one of my least favorite things, especially nowadays on Zoom, right? So again, sometimes you need to do that. But now at my current stage, I'm like, generally it gives me really shit energy. And most of the time I leave being like, no, nothing came out of this. It's just a bunch of people telling each other what they're doing. Could have been in Slack or something like that. So that's one. Two, I hate having to be on someone else's their to-do list. I hate being like, they send me an email, now I need to do it straight away. So that having the control of your time, which we've talked about, that was the inversion part for me. It was like, I don't like being at the whim of someone else's calendar. And that the flip side is, well, that means I want control of my week. So again, now looking at my calendar, the only thing I really have on my calendar this week is this, right? And there's going to be other things.
And I came 10 minutes late to the call.
Yeah, no, it's completely fine. Right? But there's also, like, obviously I'm doing plenty of work during the week too, but it's not like I have to be here at a certain particular time. So that's me. That's what I wanted to do.
Dude, I'm on the same page with you, man.
Yeah. Well, I know you hate those calls. And the
having
commute is
that block
one.
is just commute, dude.
The
actually, everything you explain is my exact thought process, like unintentionally too. I didn't sit down and write this. I'm just like,
but
wow,
you think about it.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, I hate this. It's like that's what I was thinking at that time.
And then the last one I'll just share, which again, this is all, I hate the word privilege, but like it's a very privileged place to be like, I don't have to be in meetings. I get it, right? Like most people can't do that. And I have done it for most of my career. Now I've got to a stage where I'm like, I will happily make less money. I will do things that I have more risk in what I do today than I did in the past, but it is worth it for me because I've defined those things I really don't want to do, and a life filled with things that I don't want to do is worse than a life filled with things I do like to do. So that's kind of how I see it. Exactly. Well, the last one I was going to say is like the politics of a workplace, like where you have to be convincing people this is the work I'm doing. Like telling everyone, oh, look how hard I work, instead of just working hard and actually providing results. And the cool thing when you have a business is like, you're basically paid on results. Like if it doesn't work, you're not going to get paid pretty much, right? And for you're writing. If people don't like your writing, they're going to unsubscribe. And the people that you work with are going to be like, we don't want you to write for us anymore or whatever, when you did stuff for Bloomberg, etc. So anyway, that's the one that stuck out for me. The other, and then last example I give, which is outside of the personal context, is charity water. So similarly, again, without Scott knowing this, the founder, he looked at the nonprofit world and said, what don't people like about nonprofits? Not like, oh, what's a dream nonprofit? It was like, what are the key points? And they said, I don't trust nonprofits. Number one. Number two, I don't know where the money goes and how much of the money goes. And I think 3 was like the kind of guilt-driven marketing you get, you know, like a kid with flies on their face, like
So he did inversion.
Like. He did exactly the opposite. And I don't know if he literally used the word inversion, but I remember him telling me he wrote on a piece of paper, these are all the things people don't like, and he wrote the opposite. So he's like, oh, what would a brand be like if it was cool and people actually felt hopeful and they felt really positive towards it, that so much they would want to wear it on a t-shirt. Similarly, what if you could tell them 100% of it goes to the cause? What if you told them exactly where it went, and how did we actually prove that through technology and stuff like that? So it does give you a way of like thinking about things from a different point of view. So I think that's a really, really important one. Yeah.
I'll throw one that's related. His other big famous one is circle of competence. It's just do what you know. And it's kind of related to inversion actually. It's the idea of like, you're explaining everything you hate. So another way to talk about it is like, okay, just don't do it, right? Just like, if you're not confident, just don't do it. But circle of competence is more like, it's obviously applied to him with technology. It's like they never were technology investors. And until Apple basically, but even then, like the Apple investment is more about the franchise of Apple. And like, they understood that, oh, this is actually kind of like a retail operation in the sense of a good retail with a strong brand is like something that has a long lasting moat, right? But circle competence is a big one. And the last one I'll say, which we definitely did not. The funny thing is I wrote about this in my newsletter, is like all these lessons about investing, I applied 0 of them to my life. I mean,
that's the thing. It's hard. Dude, it's nice reading it. Harder to.
It's like what he said, right? It's like it's hard. And so here's the big one. Is the one that which you'll laugh is like it's the 20 hole punch card. Imagine in your life you have a 20 hole punch card, and you're only allowed to make 20 investments in your life. Every time you make investments, you have to punch a hole. My goodness. I wish I had that 20 hole punch card during
that's
2021.
That's a great constraint there.
Dude, that's is like, do you
really
actually
think deeply
want to buy this SPAC? Do you really want this SPAC?
Isn't it crazy? Because if you compare that to the like back in the day, they went through the time where you had to call a stockbroker and buy it, right? Like there was that friction versus us whipping out Robinhood on an app and pressing a button. It feels like a game. Very different. That's a great one. I'll also share, again, not to keep plugging all the Creator Lab episodes, but I did a great one with Polina from The Profile. We also did Munger in there, so I'm pulling up my notes here. One of the things we brought up was about deserving. So a thing he said was how to find a good spouse. The best single way is to deserve a good spouse. And that I think the key word there is deserve, because you can apply that to everything. It's not just about having a spouse. It's about like business partner.
Deserve a good job.
It's like instead of being like, oh, I'm looking for this 10 out of 10 dime that has a sense of humor and is also great at these things. It's like, well, what like, and it has integrity.
That a 10 out of 10 dime with good sense of integrity wants to hang.
And then even outside of a spouse, it's just like, if you want good friends, if you want a good business partner, like you need to be the best business partner or like even like a podcast, right? Like we work together now for almost 3 years doing this every week. By now, if it didn't work, we wouldn't be working together, right? Like we spend hours every week doing this for free pretty much. And you have to say like, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm the best version of myself working with Trung. Trung's going to come. For people, I made a joke about it a few weeks ago about the 5 minutes late. That's not a big deal. On the flip side, Trung comes with the most notes and the most prep, right? So like he deserves everything that we do on here, and he's been a great partner.
Definitely
for that
could come
reason.
up later though.
That's
I
all right.
will be once these ketone IQs
come
hitting.
through. So anyway, so I think we can go for a long time on this. If you guys want us to do more on that, let us know. But we don't.
Yeah, you know what? We could probably AMA that and just walk through. You know what? We should do that because we need it. Yeah, because with Jack also, I'll tell you what we should do.
Yeah,
we should go. Each of us should pick 5 of our favorites of his things, and just people will appreciate that.
That's a good idea. Yeah, we'll do a dedicated one for that. But that was a good little preview.
Yeah,
great to catch up, bruv, and we will.
Well, we got one more.
Oh, Kissinger. Yeah. Oh, wait, let's go.
Oh, yeah.
Last one. All right, Henry Kissinger. Tell me for people who don't know, who was Henry Kissinger? He died at 100 years old.
Yeah.
And both sides of the coin here, because I know he was a controversial figure.
I mean, that timeline was like when the Charlie Munger love was getting on that timeline, incredible. And then I was seeing the complete opposite on the Henry Kissinger timeline. Listen, man, you can criticize the guy. You can make an argument he was a war criminal. I'm just like, man, when people are like dying, how do we feel about them? And immediately you go on the timeline and it's just like, you're just like celebrating their death. I'm just like, man, it's just bad. It just feels
wild.
like bad karma, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And like, and I'm saying this as the son of like people in Vietnam who were directly impacted by Henry Kissinger's decisions, which I will walk through. And like, I'll put it this way though. I would take my parents' opinion of Henry Kissinger over anyone else. Not over anyone else, but like over a lot of these like 21-year-old like northeastern Ivy League kids that have never left America, right? I don't give a shit what you think about Henry Kissinger. I care what my parents think, right?
Yeah,
so I'm gonna give my parents, specifically I spoke with my dad quite a bit about this. He has very strong feelings about Henry Kissinger.
You need to get
Negative,
senior fan
right?
on the pod for this to let him unload.
But let me walk through Henry Kissinger a bit. So, 100 years old, born in Germany, a Jewish German. His family fled Germany because of Hitler. His mom was like, okay, Hitler's clearly... His mom recognized that Hitler was an evil human being and that they were going to try to rid Europe of the Jewish population. Basically, Hitler wrote about this 10 years before he even came to power in the early 30s, blaming the Jews for everything. So, Kissinger's family got to New York. Kissinger, I think, got to New York when he was 15 years old. Very bright kid. I think his family is quasi-successful. But the whole point is, he went back to Germany in World War II towards the end. And his job, two things happened to him in his early mid-20s when he was back in Germany towards the end of World War II. Number one was this. He found out that over a dozen of his relatives were killed in the Holocaust. So it's number one. Number two was he was interrogating, because they obviously spoke German, former Nazi officers and understanding what had happened in Germany. He's working with the Americans. Well, he was, I guess at that point, an American. Went back, got to Harvard, got, I believe, a PhD from Harvard, and an intellectual. Well, one of his first works was about nuclear deterrence. So his big political break was, and this is where the controversy begins. So when you think about Henry Kissinger, he was largely in a position of influence, like directly with the US government for only about a 10-year period, call it like 68 to 78. And it was over that period where a lot of people will assign him war crimes, and up to 4 to 5 million people died directly as a result of his decisions. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of those decisions, and we'll start with where he got his political influence. So basically, he was a rising intellectual celebrity, and Nelson Rockefeller from the Rockefeller fortune. So Nelson Rockefeller became a governor of New York and vice president for Richard Nixon. Never became president, obviously tried to. But Rockefeller basically identified Henry Kissinger as someone that was the brains to Rockefeller's connections and charisma. Rockefeller was basically Kissinger's patron and got him into the U.S. establishment, political establishment. And this is where it starts, the Kissinger war crimes allegations. It's believed in 1968, it's not believed. So in 1968, Lyndon B. Johnson had withdrawn as a Democratic candidate for the presidential election. Wait, Herbert, can you pull up for me? Humphrey was the Democratic candidate from 1968. But anyways, the whole point is this. Kissinger, basically, there's peace talks between the Democratic...
Is that Hubert Humphrey?
Yeah, Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah.
He was Democratic candidate when Lyndon B. Johnson pulled out from the race. And there's peace talks between Lyndon B. Johnson and the North Vietnamese government to end what had been an escalation. So under Lyndon B. Johnson, called between 63 and 68, 500,000 Americans had entered Vietnam, supporting the South against the North Vietnamese communist Ho Chi Minh. There's peace talks underway. Apparently, we don't know the level that this happened. There's a lot of dispute. But Henry Kissinger back-channeled with the North Vietnamese and basically said, don't do a peace deal with the Democrats in the United States. Because if you do a peace deal, more likely they'll win the election. Help us win the election for Nixon, Republican, and then we'll give you a better deal. So let's just take that at face value. He extended the Vietnam War by 6 years, right? I think 20 to 30,000 more Americans died. Millions of Southeast Asians died. So that was his first accusation against him, the war crime thing. The second one, this is the heaviest, Cambodia. This is the one my dad's very critical of. So when they said that, hey, we're going to give you a better peace deal, this is what he told the North Vietnamese. What he told Nixon was, well, we need to apply a little pressure on the Vietnamese so that we actually do get a deal that everybody's win-win. And the way they did that was they started bombing Cambodia. And the reason they started bombing Cambodia is because the North Vietnamese and Ho Chi Minh were sending arms to the south through Cambodia. But he did an end around of Congress. He did an end around of the State Department because he's a national security advisor. It was under Kissinger that this national security advisor position got really powerful. So this is the big criticism. He basically started a new war in Cambodia, which was illegal. And it led to the deaths of millions of people. So that's probably the biggest war crime charge. The other ones are more crimes of omission, where he basically turned a blind eye to some dictatorial governments. So East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh, they had you probably remember, or your family definitely remembers that period, right? The separation.
Before they got independence, you mean, yeah?
Yeah, so Bangladesh became its own country. It used to be Pakistan, part of Pakistan, was East Pakistan. And Kissinger, which people say on the positive side, he opened relations with China. He basically turned a blind eye to what was happening in Pakistan because he wanted Pakistan's relationship with China to, famously, Kissinger opened the door to China by getting Nixon to meet Mao. It's the first U.S. president to be on foot in China. And China and America easing relations made it harder on the USSR for the Cold War. So that one, I'll just run through quick other ones, is like
history professor Phan back in the building.
Blind eye in East Timor, this communist movement. They allowed the Indonesian government to kill hundreds of thousands. And then this one's super famous, you'll probably know, is like the CIA and Kissinger got rid of a democratically elected socialist president, Allende, in Chile. He was murdered. And I think the culmination of everything Kissinger did was 3 to 5 million dead. And so that's a criticism, right? And I think they're all fair. And my dad is like, my dad hated him for extending the war on one end, and then also hated him for cutting a bad deal and letting, in his eyes, the North win. So that's a criticism. And the other side of the trade is this. Well, actually, Bilal, let me ask you. So everything I just told you, how much of that did you know, and what are your thoughts?
I don't know much about it, to be honest, because, I never studied this. I've just heard little pockets. So, most of that was probably new for me.
What was your broad opinion of Kissinger, like even a week ago?
Not much.
Yeah.
To be honest, very little.
But was it negative or positive?
Probably negative, but without knowing too much. So probably closer to neutral. But if it was a scale from 1 to 10, and 1 was negative, 10 was positive, I'd say a 4.
All right. Then let me hit you with this positive quickly, and then I love your thoughts on what you think with the brain dump.
Bringing me back to a 5, is that what we do?
Yeah. Well, let me hit you with the brain dump, right? So the positive side is how people portray and why he's been consulting with every president since the 50s, basically, right? So they're saying in this period between 68 and 78, it was a Cold War. And Cold War didn't end until 89, or 91, basically, when the USSR collapsed. The entire argument was his job in his eyes was to make sure that the USSR and America never had a nuclear war. That was his job. And that was accomplished in his eyes, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody else was a chess piece. Everybody else was a pawn. His entire job was to make sure the United States and USSR did not have a nuclear exchange. And his whole political theory goes back to the early 1800s and Napoleonic Wars, right? And the Napoleonic Wars, for people who don't know, during the Napoleon's control of continental Europe, it was always about coalitions. It was always like Austria, UK, Russia, Prussia, against France. And there's these revolving coalitions. Sometimes you're with an enemy, sometimes you're friends. A lot of like amoral judgments are made. So basically that was his mindset. He's like, my only mission is to make sure there's not this nuclear exchange. So that's a TLDR. I like your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
And because I kind of give you the good and bad.
No, I get you. Yeah, I think generally speaking, honestly, I think Jack does a great job of this. I should probably do it more, which is like when I don't know that much about something, it's probably better. I don't even like need to have too much of an opinion. I guess from what you said, it makes sense. My general take is most people in that position do some fucked up shit, basically, right? And
that's a great take.
That doesn't make it. Sorry to even curse for people listening with their kids, but basically, most of the time, I mean, there aren't many political leaders that personally I've ever looked up to just as an individual, and that, of course, there are ones that stood up to World War II. Obviously, you can look at stuff that happened there. You can look at people that brought liberation to people. You can look at
Churchill's a great example,
and stuff
right?
like that. Yeah, he's a great example.
He's so criticizable on a lot of race relations.
But then
India,
on the war, you're like, okay,
but he beat Hitler.
He did something important there. So that's the thing, is the humans are flawed. Everyone is flawed. People do crazy stuff, bad stuff. And when it gets to that level of power, you're obviously around some stuff that you have to make decisions, right? And anything that involves war is going to involve people dying and two sides where someone is pro, someone is against. And so, yeah, without knowing enough about it and the wider context of that time, it's hard for me to really judge.
I think that's a great answer, by the way. I think your answer is the best answer to have for people that haven't deeply looked into this, because I'll jump on this as the last point. Another thing that people often say is almost directly what you said, is like, if you were the second most powerful person in the United States, which he was under Nixon, he basically aggregated so much power in the national security as a national security advisor. Like, but he was like very opaque about it, right? Because you're not supposed to run foreign decisions through the executive branch. It's supposed to be the State Department.
Yeah.
But he had basically he was so smart and like Machiavellian, right? And part of that was what led to Watergate and ultimately Nixon's resignation. But to your point, if you're the second most powerful person in the United States between 1960 and 1970, you're making an awful decision.
Yeah.
No matter what, right?
Yeah, like, you could say for 2023 too, or 2001, 2010.
You will be making decisions that
even
are bad.
People I looked up to, like Obama, for example, without getting political again, thought he was a great orator, very, hopeful president. And I still generally probably like Obama, but also he dropped a lot of bombs, right? And he used a lot of drones on people that look like me. So I think when you're in that position,
you're right. Yeah,
you're gonna. There's anything at that level. There's good and bad. So it's very difficult for me to judge without knowing too much about it. But yeah, great breakdown. And yeah, go on. What are you gonna say?
No, the super last thing to say is, like, if people want to go down the rabbit hole, like look up Robert McNamara or McGeorge Bundy. They're all within these administrations, and like people just completely forget about them. Right? Is like he became the face of the Fog of War is the famous. Have you ever seen the Fog of War?
No,
it's a document.
I know the phrase, obviously.
Yeah,
but
people go watch the Fog of War. It's an interview with Robert McNamara. Robert McNamara was a former CEO of Ford. He basically ran the logistics and military campaigns under Kennedy and Johnson. But anyways, too much fun fact fan today, but
that's great. No, that's great. I think it's worth mentioning. Obviously, whatever you think of him, was an influential person of our time that also died recently. So, all right, man, that was great. We could call it here. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let us know what you think of that in the comments, in Telegram, on YouTube. You guys post funny comments in Telegram, which I love, but also smash it in YouTube as well, because that helps.
And
we always respond to those as well. Yeah. So yeah, appreciate all the support. We got more coming for you guys in the next few weeks, and we'll speak soon. Cheers.
Peace out.